Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation on tips and tricks that you can use on final exams or any exams. So the purpose of this presentation is for you to gain any tips or tricks that you might not have known that can help you with your exam preparation. Throughout the presentation, I will be using examples to reinforce any tips or tricks. Tests and exams can be scary and it may seem that they will be the determining factor for your final grade in class, but hopefully by the end of this hopefully by the end of this presentation, I hope that you walk out and end up feeling more confident than you are right now. So without further ado, let's start. So these are the normal steps a student would typically take before their final exam or any test for that matter. But we are on exam mode, so a lot of my example is going to be dealing with a final exam. So step one, we need to prepare to study. Well, how are we going to study? When is our test? What are we going to do to study? Start out by figuring out when your test date is. This will allow you to set up a study plan, study schedule, or study habit. Now that you have created your plan and schedule, put it into action. If you already planned that you're going to take 3 hours of every day to study, make sure you have that set out and that you're actually doing it. Whatever you're doing, don't forget to take your breaks. You don't want to be fatigued and end up just quitting because you're overwhelmed with information. Next, reinforce your information. Are you understanding everything or do you have questions? Are you answering the practice problems correctly? Reach out to other students, professors, a tutor, or other resources like Google or YouTube to see if you're mastering the information. Because otherwise, what's the point of, studying all of this stuff just for you not to know it? How is that going to help you in your final exam? And finally, it is time for the exam. You've been putting the effort in, you've worked your butt off. So go into that exam room and be confident. Study tips. We all understand that study can be very difficult, especially if you're doing it alone. And studying itself has always had a bad history of being very boring. So, what can we do to make study, not so boring? Don't forget to take your breaks. For example, if you're taking an hour to study in your day, put a 15-minute break in there. During that 15-minute, you can give yourself time to make a nice snack, like a sandwich, or go on Facebook or Instagram, watch a funny video. When you're taking your breaks, make sure you have a timer. I personally know that a 15-minute break can quickly become to an hour break, to then a 5-hour break, and so on. If you have a hard time like me keeping yourself on a schedule, have someone either there or nearby you to hold you accountable. This way, you will be keeping yourself on track to success. Don't forget to reward yourself. Studying does require a lot of mental energy and sometimes physical energy. So it's okay to reward yourself. If you are forced to read a chapter or 2 chapters for your class, maybe, every 3 or so page, give yourself a piece of candy or have a couple of chips. Reward yourself with a break. Again, have breaks. You can also study with your friend. This way, it can be easy for someone to hold you accountable and you can hold each other accountable. You two can play a game with your notes. But the downside to it, it can be distracting, especially if it's a close friend and you guys have some nice tea or gossip you need to talk about. My favorite way to study is to create my notes into some sort of artistic form. So I'm going to show an example of a part of my notes that I decided to turn apart to a rap. So in chemistry right now, this will be a part of my final exam, and we are talking about acids and bases and equilibria. So the main point of the example is for me to remember the process of creating this ice chart. So it's the concentration, the I stands for initial change equation, but the most important thing I need to make sure is I balance this equation. So that's kind of like the gist of it. So this is how I would study on the way to remember how to do the ICE process for calculating equilibria. And this is only the first steps, obviously. I'm gonna start over that. I'm sorry. From the top, then across, chem equilibria. Make sure equation is balanced, chem equilibria. I'm talking ice, yeah, equilibria. Find initial, then change, then equation, yeah. So yeah, obviously, simple way to kind of sum up everything I just said in the previous slide. So, you've studied, and now it's almost time for your exam, whether it's a couple days before or the day of. What should you do? Before entering the exam room, you should make sure you got enough sleep. You don't want to be taking a nap during your exam time. It will cut off your time and you're not going to be able to make it up. Make sure you are prepared. If the exam prep person says you're allowed to bring your own calculator because there won't be one provided for you, man, bring your calculator, bring your pencil. Most of the times there will be, supplies there for you. However, some instructors might say you're allowed to bring a small cheat sheet. Make sure you have that cheat sheet because it can help you. Have something to eat. Have food in your system. If your exam is in the morning and you're not really a breakfast person, well, remember, you are using a lot of mental power, and that does burn a lot of energy. So at least eat a snack before you enter. A hungry stomach can be very distracting. Finally, wear comfortable clothes. Do not show up in your exam room wearing, a tank top and shorts if it's going to be under, AC condition. Don't come in wearing stuff that's going to be itchy. It's just going to distract you. So during your exam, here are some tips and tricks that you can utilize for your questions and answers. Read all your questions first. This will allow you to cut your time down instead of reading the passage first, then going back to the answer and then going back to your questions. Sometimes your questions will actually allow you just to skim over the material, and sometimes some questions relate to each other. Therefore, maybe one answer will be correct for both questions. Answer all the easy questions first, then do the hard one. Answer all the questions you know first. This way, it will give you the remainder of the time to work on the harder questions. If the exam is only 2 hours, and out of that 2 hours, 1 hour and 30 minutes of that time was you answering the 2 hardest questions in the exam, you only now have 30 minutes to answer the easy questions, but you don't even know if you can complete them all. Versus if you complete all of the answers that you already know within 10-15 minutes, you now have an hour 45 minutes to answer the other questions that you don't know. For multiple choice questions, there is always one super duper wrong answer. Use common sense. If it doesn't sound right, even if you haven't been paying attention in class, but you heard something that, doesn't make sense to the answer, it is the wrong answer. You gotta focus and use that brain power. Test anxiety is common and it's understandable, but you gotta fight through it and you gotta keep focusing. So this way, you can go ahead and get your answer and thought process in a organized manner and finish strong. So, this is an example of using your brain power and focusing. Also, multiple choice questions. You see your answer choices? Something might look right, something might look wrong. Let's read the question. April's mom had 5 children. They are named North, West, South, and East. What is the 5th child's name? Now, you can sit there and think, well, the 4 children's name have to do with directions on a compass. So it seems like all of these answers are correct. Well, you have north, could be northwest, could be northeast. Well, what if it could be south? Well, it could be southeast because they're right next to each other. It could be northwest because they're not right next to each other. But use that common sense. April's mom had 5 children. April, possessive apostrophe, meaning that's her mom. She's her mom's child. There are 5 children here, but there's only 4 children listed. Who is the 5th child? It is April. Therefore, your answer is E, none of the above. Next question. You and your friend were on the road. After 2 hours of driving, you asked your friend to be the driver so you can take a power nap. After 30 minutes of napping, you woke up only to see your friend isn't in the car and the doors are locked. It looks like you guys are at a gas station and you need to use the restroom. What can you do to get out of the car? Okay. The answer choices are A, bust the windows and climb out. B, use your phone and call 911 for help. C, scream at the top of your lungs, hoping that someone will hear you. D, unlock the car by pressing the lock button. Or E, accept your fate and do nothing. So, what can we get out of this? Your friend is not there. You were napping. So things, scenery was different, but you're at a gas station, so it's somewhere safe. But you don't know how to get out of the car because your friends have the key. Well, you need to pee or go number 2. So it's not like you're going to do it in a car, so you need to get out. Well, based on those logical reasoning, E is completely wrong. Cross that out. So now, what are you going to do next? You can bust a window and climb out. Use your phone, call 911 for help. Or you scream at the top of your lungs, hopefully someone will hear you. Well, busting a window and climbing out might be a little too extreme. You are, after all, at a gas station. You can always use your phone, call 911 for help, but it's not an emergency. You don't want to bother the people, so you go ahead and cross that out too. So between these 2 answers, screaming at the top of your lungs, hoping someone will hear you, and unlock the door by pressing the lock button, they both sound very reasonable. You are at a gas station. At any moment, someone can hear you. But you are an adult, and you know where the lock buttons are. Therefore, D is the logical answer for this question. Other test tips to take include: read the instruction carefully. If your final exam for math says circle your final answer, circle your final answer. This might help your instructor who is grading it find the answer quicker, or he or she could actually take points off just because you simply did not follow instruction. Another exam for a math test, even science test, or even anything. If you studied a lot of equations, definitions, dates, do a mind dump. As soon as they say start and you have scrap paper or space, write everything you know down on that piece of paper or on that free space so that you don't have to force yourself to sit there and remember it. Use a highlighter or highlight important details in your questions. There's a lot of words in a question, and some of them are not necessary. Focus on the important portion. What is the question asking you? What is it trying to tell you? Make sure you double check your answers. A negative sign can be a difference between receiving full credit and partial credit, or if it's asking you the opposite versus what is the true definition, could cost you full points. This isn't a guarantee, but sometimes trusting your gut is the best bet. I know there are times where we might second guess our answers, but when we check our answers again after we receive our exam result, we're like, darn, we should have trusted our gut. Trust your gut. Breathe. Use breathing exercise to lower your heart rate, bring your mind from its anxiety back to a controlled manner so you can focus. And finally, Put your name on your materials. Put your name on your test paper, on your Scantron, on your work paper, pretty much anywhere that you're going to have to use. Especially if your instructor or test prep person says put your name on your work so that they can show proof that you actually did show your work instead of you're cheating. So in summary, we talked about the steps to success and some study tips. Ultimately, make it fun. It doesn't feel like a chore anymore. What to do before your exam? Be well rested, be fed, be prepared. Ultimately, be on time. Some exams, some instructor may not let you take your exam if you're late. Test taking hacks. Remember, read your questions carefully. Read the direction. If all fails, sometimes choosing C might not be a bad idea. Before I leave, I would like for us to say some positive affirmations for ourselves. I am confident. I am prepared. I know what I need to do to pass this test. I will try my best to get the best grade. And finally, I am not defined by my grade. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I wish you all luck on your final exam or any exam you will take now or in the near future. Good luck, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.